Hey everybody, this is Kodak here. So right now, Bakugan is having its first set of actual open tournaments at ECCC, which I believe refers to Emerald City Comic Con, and I figured now would be the perfect time to show another deck breakdown. Today we're looking at an aggro deck. This is a deck that is specifically designed to either defeat an enemy very quickly or render them basically helpless in a very, very short amount of time, basically unable to muster any kind of meaningful resistance. So the goal of this deck is to hit fast, hit hard, and knock them on their toes. Now the deck title I actually have is called Stratavarius, and you'll actually see why as we go forward. But this is Darkus, Aquos, and Aurelus, which makes it perfectly opposed to my The Awesome Ones deck. Now it is a bit different from most aggro decks, as most aggro decks tend to be Darkus, Pyrus, Aurelus, because when you attack very quickly with a lot of low-cost cards, there's going to be a lot of zero-cost, a lot of one-cost cards, you frequently go through your hand. So Pyrus decks tend to use Pyrus Serpentis Ultra instead in order to get the benefits from Fury, but this deck is designed to be a bit more reliable. It has a lot more B power boosting, which allows it to, a lot more B power boosting, a lot more draw power, which allows it to, it gives it a lot more strength to punish with, if not as many powerful single strikes. Now, starting off, we have Darkus Hydorous Ultra. This thing here is the gold standard for aggro decks because of that 800 B power. 800 B power is the highest base B power we have yet on any core Bakugan. The only ones that even come close have to be like Aurelus, or they have to be like Titan Dragonoid, but that 800 really gives this thing a huge advantage right out of the gate. It's an 801, it only has 1 damage, but here's the thing, if it lands on Fire Fist, which is a very powerful type of core, it gets an additional +3 damage, and it brings a Fire Fist to play. In this case, we are using Fire Fist, power 250B +3 damage. Another decent option is the Fire Fist plus 150B plus 4 damage, or even the flat out +5 damage, because the goal here is to hit fast and hit hard, although I'm less worried about it because the regular fist we're bringing in is the fist +3 damage. You notice I'm not using the ones that offer B power bonuses here. This entire deck, its starting roster, has nothing below a 500, so if an opponent manages to latch onto this thing to try to turn things around, they're not going to get a B power boost to help them get over the strong Bakugan that we have here, and they're only going to get stronger as time goes on. Up next, we have a bit of an odd choice, Aquos Fangzor. Now, Aquos Fangzor seems like a bit of an odd choice. It's kind of low damage. Aquos actually has a lot of high damage Bakugan stuff, like Core Hydorous, or even Trox, which has a base damage of 7. But this thing is in here for 2 reasons. First of all, that base power of 600 is, again, really high, really difficult to get over, and it brings a Fire Fist to play, which Trox and Hydorous really don't. We are actually going to be repeating ourselves with another set of +250B +3 damage, and +3 damage regular fist. So again, things that are designed to give more boosts to Hydorous Ultra to help it land on that target and get its big damage buffs, as well as trying to not only give more damage buffs to ourselves, but attempt to deprive our opponent of the chance to turn things around if they're grabbing onto these cores hoping for a B power boost. And finally, we have Aurelus Nillious. Now, an Aurelus Bakugan tends to get 2 additional points to throw around, although Hydorous Ultra at an 801 and actually Aquos Trox at 207 break the curve, but this one goes for a fairly even 505, although it's not really useful for the cores it brings into play. There's also Aurelus Garganoid Ultra, which works again with the Fire Fist strategy, which is a decent alternative to Nillious, but there's a reason why Nillious is used in this deck. Now, I'm sure some of you, based on the presence of a Darkus Bakugan, can already guess what that is, but it sadly does not bring a Fire Fist to play. Instead, I have it bring the -300B shield, like I have in the Awesome Ones deck, designed specifically to be planted right in front of your opponent to trip them up, and the +150B +2 damage, mainly because I ran out of the +3, and it might be good to sort of fortify yourself with some more of these. So, anyway, getting into the actual deck itself, all of the attributes have some sort of cost 0 card, and this deck makes use of both Aquos's cost 0 card, Greater Water Boost, 3 copies, and Darkus's 0 cost card, Shade Blade. Now, these These don't really offer much in the way of boosts. Greater Water Boost gives plus 100 B power, and Shade Blade does plus 2 damage. They do allow me to apply pressure without costing me any energy, so essentially for free, but it's more for the fact that these cards are good at comboing any other cards. I mean, if I can get some damage bonuses off of Shade Blade, like if I get Darkus Hydorous to land on a Fist Core, which brings its damage up to 7, and then I ping it again to make it up to 9, that's more than a quarter of my opponent's health in a single blow, like right on the first turn. But these cards are in here more because of how they synergize with effects like the card Tides, 3 of, and the card Wave Slash, 3 of. These cards both have an effect called Flow, which means if you've played another card that turn, their bonus is actually much, much higher. Tides is a lot more powerful than is either weaker than your typical 1 cost, or your typical 1 cost is going to be plus 200 unless it's Chaos. But if you have Flow active, such as by playing Greater Water Boost, you get that up to plus 400 instead. That helps that, and Wave Slash is the same way. It either is a below average 3 energy at plus 300, but if you've played Flow, it becomes a plus 1000 instead. And on turn 3, that is absolutely devastating. You're going to be leaning on these Tides cards because they give you very, very fantastic early game power, which allow you to defeat your opponents no matter what they try to throw at you, and just you know, wreak havoc. 3 copies of the card Inspire. Now, Inspire, it's not really here for the damage boost, and it's not really here for the fact that you draw a card. It is, again, here to benefit Flow, because it's a 1-cost card that activates Flow that rather than avoiding cutting down on your energy the way a card like Shade Blade would, instead it does not cut down on your hand size. And when using Darkus and Aquos, especially when you're using the Flow and the Sacrifice strategies, keeping your hand size up is very important. And Inspire allows you to cycle ahead in your deck. It allows you to activate Flow. It allows you to do a bunch of other things. And now we have a super flexible card, Chaotic Darkness. Chaotic Darkness on its own is a very, very powerful card. It is a 1-cost card that forces your opponent to discard a card. It is the Bakugan version of the magic card Duress, which any player will tell you is very powerful. Now, this does not offer the benefit of being able to see your opponent's hand the way Duress does, but what it does do is it says choose a player to discard a card, and guess what that can be? That can also be yourself. So there are a few cards in this deck that activate when they get discarded from the hand, and if I have nothing else that works, I can use Chaotic Darkness to play it on myself right away. Like, I'm just going to go ahead and skip to the Evo card here. 3 copies of Everett Nillious Aurelus. And just remember, if I have a backing there, it means I'm missing a card. I'm missing a lot less cards from this deck. What this does is it's an 808 for 3, which isn't very good until you read its effect. If you discard this card, you may play it for free. So if you use this card with a sacrifice effect, or if you do a shrewd play with Chaotic Darkness, then you can get this thing out way earlier than turn 3 and just give your opponents a massive headache with Aurelus Nillious. This is one of the core strategies, because then, you know, you play this, it lands on a Fist Core, giving an additional plus 3 damage, it becomes 11 damage, play Shade Blade on it, it becomes 13 damage. That is a third of your opponent's life points in a single hit. You can make that happen as early as turn 1 if you get Chaotic Darkness. It is devastatingly powerful. Like I said, this is how you whittle away at your opponent. And the best part is, because this is an Aurelus Bakugan, none of your opponent's defenses will be online to stop that damage. They will just cry as they watch their flip cards go away, unless they are running Pact of Darkness. But if they are running Pact of Darkness, then Hydorous causes the same flow of tears. So that's the goal of this deck, is to hit your opponent hard before they can get up the Repel Outsiders cards, the ones that stop out, the ones that stop any non-color, because nothing less than a 3-cost stop can stop an Aurelus, and that's what makes them so dangerous and hard to deal with. Up next, we have 3 copies of Might of Night. It's 2 cost, but it has a couple of interesting effects to it. First of all, it grants Stealth Strike, which means that if on turn 2 your opponent tries to hit you with Nature's Power, which hits a non-Ventus Bakugan for minus 500, you can play this as a counter and stop that. They cannot do anything that lowers your stats. The same if you land on a core that lowers your stats, like a trap that your opponent played for you. If you play Might of Night, it nullifies the penalty that that core would have given you. There's also another one called Cloak and Shadow, which offers just a flat +2 damage. And Shadow Strike used to be a lot better. It used to essentially be Shroud. It prevented you... It prevented, you know, the evolution cards from being targeted. It prevented the cores from getting kicked. That's not true anymore. It's a lot less powerful, but it's still really good. But the kicker here is it activates Sacrifice for just 2 energy. You may discard a card for 5 energy, which, if that card you sacrifice is, say, Shadow Coil, which you have 3 copies of, if you discard Shadow Coil, if it gets discarded from your hand, you can play it for free. So that becomes +9 damage for 2 energy. That is, again, a very, very aggressive strategy. It's one that this deck proudly leans on to do just huge and horrendous damage really, really fast. You can't really get better than +9 damage for 2 energy, especially since this counts as a card that gets played for some effects that happen later. So, moving on. Our final is a 2-off of Stoneskin. It was either between this and Wave Slash. Wave Slash, however, provides a bigger bonus, although Stoneskin does have something interesting, because the current ruling is that Sacrifice is not a cost. You do not have to activate it the moment you play the card. You play it when the card resolves. So if I play Stoneskin and my opponent, like, for some reason plays another B power boost against it, even though typically you'd let it resolve, or if they hit it with the card Triple Blast Cannon, a card that negates an action card as it's being played, I can opt to not pay the sacrifice cost. I actually don't play the sacrifice cost. So, very, very interesting. So even if you have priority, you basically get this choice depending on what your opponent winds up doing. Although, honestly, if it were me, I'd wait for Stoneskin to resolve before I play my response in order to try to catch them off guard. But at the same time, they're incentivized to sacrifice with cards like Shadow Coil or Aurelus Nillious, Hyper Nillious. I don't have China in this deck, but the reason it's called Stratavarius is because it has 3 copies of Strata. Strata's effect is kind of risky. It allows both players to draw an extra card at the start of the round, but here's the thing. I'm going to want to be playing cards like mad, like crazy. I'm going to have all sorts of cheap cards that I'm going to be playing. So in very, very early game, Strata is a huge boost to you. It also has the effect of sort of tripping up the Fury strategy, because the Fury strategy requires them to have an empty hand, and if they have 2 cards in their hand at the start of their turn, or 2 or even 3 or 4 instead of 1, it makes it a bit harder for them to deal with it. But most importantly, it gives you that draw power, it gives you the stuff that allows you to play flow, that allows you to synergize into sacrifice, that allows you to play cards like Everett Ray, 3 copies. Now, this is the only one I'm short more than 1 copy on. But what Everett Ray does is he gives all of your Bakugan plus 200 B power, but he costs 2 less energy to play for each card you have played that turn. So if I have him in my hand on turn 1 and I play Greater Water Boost, followed by Chaotic Darkness in order to play Hyper Nillious for free, that's 3 cards right there on turn 1, and he's in play for free. So there is a lot of potential behind this card. It is very easy to play him, and it has been pretty popular in the meta for aggression decks that use Aquos, because if you have enough draw power, it is very, very easy to satisfy his requirements. Our other 2-of is going to be Hyper Fangzor. Hyper Fangzor is it's an awesome rare, which is makes it a bit difficult to find, and it's a little weird because it can only use its effect once. It's the only card in the deck that costs more than 4 that doesn't have some way of lowering its cost. But this guy is basically there to be a last resort. If after you pummel your opponent for 3 turns, they don't go down, you can pop Hyper Fangzor to draw 3 more cards that hopefully give you the advantage you need to finally finish your opponent off. This is basically either the coup de grace or your desperate last-ditch effort. That little bit of draw power there, that sort of very amazing emergency draw power, makes Hyper Fangzor very good. I really hope they come up with a follow-up for it. And finally, what else could it be but 3 copies of Pact of Darkness? It's the only flip card that aggro decks ever run, because it can be used on turn 1. It is, again, an emergency thing that you fall back on in case your opponent is also running an aggro deck and they manage to get off that Serpentes Fury with like 18 damage on it. You can stop it with Pact of Darkness and play some of your really important cards for free. So, that's a look at the deck that I call Stratavarius, because it uses Strata. Aren't I clever? But yeah, that's the basic design for an aggro deck. I might do some more decks in the future, but I'm trying to mix it up a little bit. Mostly I'm just trying to get my card collection together so I don't have to use proxies on screen. It's a little embarrassing. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. It's, like I said, it's a bit less aggressive than Darkus Pyrus Aurelus, but it does have that greater consistency, that greater draw power, and even things like Strata that kind of trip the Fury strategy up. So that's the fun of these cards, the zero-cost cards, because most of the other ones, the zero-cost cards, are not nearly this good. Ventus has one called Toxify, which lowers damage by 3. It's just damage mitigation, which is ignored by things like Shadow Strike, which it turns out the new Fangzor Ultra is going to be getting just kind of built in as a 601. Pyrus is actually a flip card, the worst flip card in the game, called Lava Flow. It gives you 1 energy. I don't know what you're going to do with 1 energy when you're losing. And finally, Chaos has Whiteout, which is plus 3 damage to a Chaos Bakugan. Greater Water Boost and Shade Blade are by far the best bonus cost 0 cards in the game, and this deck uses both of them to great effect. So this is another fun one. Greater Water Boost might be hard to find. Strata is in pretty high demand. Hyper Nillious is in pretty high demand. And Everett, where's Everett? Everett is also in really high demand because of just how effective this strategy is. So until next time, that is a look at the deck Stratavarius, and this is Kodak signing off. Bakugan Brawl!
Bakugan Brawl, it's a big brawl. Bakugan Brawl is for it all. Bakugan Brawl, standing tall, we're the awesome ones. Powers in our hand, take a stand.